Welcome to the fifth episode of the KMBest podcast with Gerry Thompson. We're going to be talking about Iron Patriot, about Victoria Hand, and about where Rocket and Groot landed to start out with. And then a new section called the Snapback, taking that suggestion from the comment section. That is going to be our listener question section. We've got plenty of those. So if you've ever wanted to know our takes on a wide variety of topics, put that right at the end. But we're going to jump in with, I think, we're probably going to have to start with Iron Patriot, who is the season pass card that is coming out on Tuesday. A 2/3 with an on-reveal ability that gives you a 4, 5, or 6 cost card. And then if you're winning that location at the end of the next turn, discounts that card by 4. This card has gotten a lot of reactions, most of them ranging from, why would they do this? To, oh my god, why would they do this? Gerry, what do you think about this card and how strong it seems?
I'm not as tuned into the reactions as you are. I'm kind of
Mhm.
glad that folks are that hyped about it. I mean, it seems like they're hyped. At least they think the card is strong. Let's put it that way.
I have not seen a
Because
single person say otherwise.
yeah, so that's good because I also thought the card was quite strong, and I think that the two spot curve or on the curve in Marvel Snap has been like pretty weird for a very long time, where you don't have a lot of stuff that is like you it can't really just afford to be like a rate monster. You know, they can't just make like vanilla 2/6 or something. That would just be really strange. And I don't know that vanilla 2/5 would be worth playing, right? And it just means that all of the two cost things have to be like synergy based. This is the first one in quite a long time. I think probably like Kate Bishop was the last one where it's just like this is just kind of generically good. I'm happy to put this in a lot of places, and I like the RNG aspect of things too, where it's like you're gonna play out some pretty fun games based on the weird stuff that you get off of this thing, and I'm excited for that. So I'm pretty stoked about the card, but yeah, maybe it's too good. I don't know.
Yeah, so just to put that in context a little bit, because this is something I think about a lot too. 2 is the actual only spot on the curve where the vanilla card is still roughly the standard. At everywhere else, your vanilla card is getting blown out of the water by something that just is that, but better. Every other spot on the curve is getting absolutely demolished, except 2, where 2/3 with upside, the thing the tutorial tells you to do, replace your Shocker with Sentinel, is still the code of how to be a 2 drop. There are no 2/4s with upside for some reason that is incredibly weird. They just haven't been willing to do that. They've made Hydra Bob, but they won't make a 2/5. And it's very weird. And so
Agent
instead,
Venom.
Agent Venom.
Agent
Yes,
Venom.
Agent Venom is a 2/5, but arguable upside downside, right? Like this
Started 2/4.
he started 2/4. He was completely broken. Maybe that's a reason they don't make 2/4s. Every 2/4 they've ever made has been super broken. That QED. I don't think they've made another 2/4. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Mysterio.
He started as a 2/5, and also he is super broken. So I'll take the win on that.
Oh god, it did start as a 2/5, didn't it?
I guess Colleen Wing is the 2/4 that isn't broken, and Cloak is the 2/4 that isn't broken. But those were in the game. They haven't ever made a Series 5 2/4. It's never happened except for the one time it was like the best card ever. Ergo, they're clearly correct to keep making these like weird 2/3 with upside types that I just sort of look at as like Jeff's or not Kitty Price, Kate Bishop's. Like they're all kind of like that. But this one seems to have a much more polarizing effect on the game. Where if this happens, you're basically turning into like a mini Arishem almost, where it's like, haha, I've randomly generated the perfect card, and even if it's not the perfect card, it's like basically free, so who cares? When you get
Yeah,
that
how
one
bad can it
energy
be?
claw, like it's gonna be a nightmare when you get that one energy claw. But even like a card that just put a normal claw in your hand, you'd be like, yeah, that's an awesome 2/3. I would love that. Because if this was like a different spot on the curve, it would have to compete with so many more cards. But at 2/3, it's really just the other value 2/3s. And I do think it stands out when you compare.
Yeah, I mean, it is cable, but like way, way higher upside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most frustrating thing about this card is that it is going to lead to some turn six like double or triple spelling kind of
Yeah.
things, where it's like you just get to sandbag this thing for as long as you want. And I don't like that aspect of it, you know? But I think that it does have good incentives, at least, where it does tell you, or at least more so like tell your opponent to like contest locations early and maybe start playing cheaper cards and be a little bit more low to the ground and stuff. And I think overall that's good for the game.
One question I have is, I mean, obviously, yeah, contest locations early. I like that mechanic, but whenever it shows up on a location, it ends up very polarizing. Some decks are really good at the raft, some decks are not. This is effectively a mini raft that's like one-sided. And so you end up with a card that is going to tell you to build the deck a certain way, is going to have a lot of synergy with cards like, say, Hydra Bob, that are just very much bigger than everything else there, and then on turn 3 provides an alternate use of cards like Juggernaut and Negasonic. That is another
Hmm.
really unique aspect that this card has to it, where it's like, in a world where you're playing, say, Wiccan, Quicksilver into Iron Patriot into Negasonic, Quicksilver into Iron Patriot into Juggernaut. That's the kind of stuff that's like, that card is good on turn 3 with Iron Patriot, but it's also busted on turn 6 as long as you have priority, right? And that kind of stuff is really, really strong, I think. Like, that's the kind of combinations that have me feeling like this is likely to be like a mid-range card du jour for the time being.
Yeah, I think so too. But I don't know. You mentioned the locations, like they show up randomly. You didn't necessarily know that it was going to show up. And so you didn't build your deck around it. But this is a thing where, like, even if you don't have the season pass or you don't want to buy it or whatever, you know that a lot of people are going to be playing it. And so, like, you know that that sort of like pseudo location thing is going to show up. Like, everyone should know that they're supposed to be building their deck with this in mind, at least a little bit. And it also introduces a lot of little sub games too, where you're talking about wanting to have Prio on turn 3 for things like Negasonic for sure. Juggernaut matters less, right? But it means that if you are doing the Quicksilver thing, maybe you want to play your Quicksilver on the right location because they might not start playing over there. Like, it is pretty normal to just safely play a thing in the left location on the first couple turns, right? And I think that all that stuff is really interesting. It's switching up just kind of like the stuff we take for granted in the game.
I think that is true. I also just have like some power level concerns. What I'm really wondering though is like, okay, we keep approaching this point where it's like, all right, eventually a mid range deck is going to start outpowering all the decks that are supposed to go over the top of it, right? Rocket and Groot helps do that with most varieties of non move bounce. Like, that is already moving these mid range decks closer to being able to do that. We'll get to Rocket and Groot a bit later. This card, if you get a good roll off of it, can actually result in beating one of those move bounce decks. I think like that is
Yeah.
how high the high rolls are when you're getting like a free 14 power or whatever, a one power, one energy claw. Like, that is actually the kind of stuff that can help you as a mid range deck with a bunch of other good cards actually beat those kind of decks. Is that worrying for you?
I mean, yeah, for sure. And there's also like the very weird scenarios where it's like, oh, I got 0 Outer Lady Death Strike off
Yeah,
the Iron Patriot or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah, yeah.
just like things that you would never play around in a million years, like just these very unique one of cards, right? And it it's so funny because it's spread out between fours, fives, and sixes. It's not even
Yeah.
like, oh, I just need to think about one category of them or whatever. It is a pretty wide pool of cards. Uh so yeah, that could be frustrating for sure. I know that there are going to be people that complain about that sort of thing specifically. Is I lost to this very unlikely thing, um, and I do think it's going to be very swingy. But I think people at that point are maybe complaining about the wrong thing. Where it's like, yeah, it became swingy, but it wasn't turn 6 that mattered. It was like turns 1, 2, and 3 that mattered, and you just need to be fighting for that harder. That's it.
I do think that there's an element of RSM to this card where people are going to remember the zero cost Shang-Chi. I'm playing an ongoing deck and they got Enchantress. This sucks. Why would they make this? And I honestly, like, looking at it, it's probably not stronger than RSM per se, but like in terms of card quality, I kind of think it might be. And so like this is a card that's like very powerful and leans into something that they got a lot of feedback that, for various reasons, as diplomatically as I can say this, their player base doesn't seem able to handle very well. And I Guess I wonder if it's risky to put that much power onto a card in that context, where it's like, this is something that your player base, whether or not they're right about it, has demonstrated that they cannot handle in a meaningful way, but also demonstrated that they have a voracious appetite to use for their own advantage, right? Arishem is probably the most popular card in the game, or probably in terms of like selling, I would imagine is one of the most popular cards in the game. I strongly suspect this card will be similar because the power level concerns are there, but I guess there's just something to the idea that like at what point are there too many cards that rely on we're going to do something splashy and cool and fundamentally a little bit too strong to justify the splashy coolness? At what point does that go too far?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you ask the question of like what can we do as this game company to try and incentivize people to care more about the early game,
Mhm.
which is kind of weird in like a 3-minute game that lasts 6 turns or whatever. But like it's half the game, right? So if that is their goal, I think a card like this does that because it is very strong and it just kind of forces a lot of games to be about that. And I think that comes with pros and cons, right? Like on one hand, it means that is going to be happening way more often than you probably want, especially on the first like week or month of release. And I don't know, maybe not as opt in as you would like because it's specifically the season pass card as well. So, okay, cool. I'm having fun with this, but at least like Arishem was just like a rando card they put up for sale, right? Anyone
Yeah,
could do
but
that.
it was also like it was also like half the ladder. Like Arishem was way less like I don't think we've ever seen a card played as much as release week Arishem. At least I haven't.
Yeah, yeah, I get that too. But if you are a person who you're gaming on a budget,
Mhm.
you can't justify purchasing a season pass. Totally understandable, and you will get a little frustrated because everyone is forcing you to like play this sub game that you did not sign up for or whatever.
Yeah.
I could see being frustrated by that, So then, especially when you build your deck to like win these Iron Patriot wars, and then you don't even have Iron Patriot in your deck to capitalize on it, kind of frustrating.
Yeah, like that's the other thing is that if it is centralizing, it's centralizing in a way that gets more people to play it. Because if you're building so that your opponent's Iron Patriots don't go off, well, that's also the same thing as building so that your Iron Patriots do. So you might as well get your free guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't know. I think this card is by far their most ambitious of the month in terms of power level. And one of the more ambitious designs I've seen in a while, honestly. And like that's coming from like we just had Galacta, Doom 2099, Rocket and Groot, like fairly ambitious designs. This guy is quite ambitious, even in that context.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, just like the cost reduction, the extra card, kind of a new mechanic in terms of like caring about winning a location early and
Hmm.
just like winning it for that split second and like not really caring about it later or whatever, right? So yeah, there's a lot going on and uh I don't know, it seems like they want their season passes to sell and the easiest way to do that is to like put a juiced card there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like you're gonna get people to engage with this. I don't know if it is the optimal outcome necessarily, like if you're overshooting it and how bad that is. But I think if just your goal is like, can we get people to do this? Like it's gonna work for sure.
Yeah, when I think about season pass cards, a little bit of a segue here. The thing that comes to mind for me is like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they just want to release a broken season pass and then nerf it a day later kind of deal. I've looked at the numbers. It looks like it's about like a third, a third, and a third in terms of season passes that have been released, getting buffed, nerfed, or not changing at all.
Okay.
And well, there is a little bit of a slant. It's not like literally a third, a third, a third. I think more have been buffed than anything else by like one card, maybe. But in the last year, it's really been very few. A lot of the early season passes that needed buffs were from earlier seasons, right? Like cards like Thor, who released as a 4/6, right? Where it's like very obvious basic mistakes. And as the game has matured, there have been more like we released the season pass card, it was too strong, we got to nerf it down. Surtur and Agent Venom are kind of like the poster boys of this at this point. I am sort of sensitive to that because it does seem to mean that as they get, in theory, better at executing on their vision does seem to include, like, look, every single card we make, we want to be good enough to justify the purchase. Or at the very least, interesting enough to justify the purchase, and good is a really good way to make a card interesting. And
True.
that's the thing that really gets me is like, it's like, if you asked them, I think they'd say something like, well, we want all of our cards to be worth purchasing. And then you dive into what worth purchasing means, and like players will put up with a lot if you win. It's like the opposite of the smiley face, frowny face in MTG Arena, where like it's just like, did you have fun in this game is almost directly correlated to whether or not you won. It's the opposite of that. Like a player is so much more likely to be like, yeah, I had a ton of fun with this new card if they're beating the shit out of people. And so it's like, I find it hard to figure out, like, how are you ever supposed to divorce yourself from that incentive? If you're one of the people working on this game, how are you ever supposed to be like, look, it's okay if we miss low? I don't understand how they're able, like, and like we keep seeing these cards come out. They're strong, they're strong, they're strong, they're strong, they're strong. And in a sense, this is actually kind of restrained in the context of like, it's just a 2/3. But like, there is something that worries me about that when we're talking about like, when you're trying to make a card that you want to succeed, it feels like they're incentivized to just be like, let's take a swing every time. And they're always swinging for the fences. They're not hitting for average, they're hitting for power.
Yeah, certainly it seems like that now, compared to some of the older cards that you mentioned. But I don't know, it's kind of like weird incentives too, where one of the like I think just the actual best value by far is the season pass,
Yeah.
right? Not even just because of the card, but just all the rewards on it for $10 or whatever, right?
Yes, it is the best
And
value purchase in the game by, I would, probably not an order of magnitude, but like at least double the next best thing, I
yeah,
think.
a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, it asks a lot of you, right? Like you kind of have to log on every day for 30 days, but
Yeah.
you know, you hopefully you're doing that anyway. So, uh I feel like if I were running a game like this, and I've played a lot of gotcha games, a lot of them have battle passes. I've interacted with this stuff quite a bit, and I feel like you at least want to have like one thing that is like a justifiable purchase. Like maybe like a one-time offer or
Mhm.
a really incentivizing battle pass or whatever. You just want to get that person to cross the threshold and just click buy once, because as a person who used to just be like, I'm only going to be free to play in these silly mobile games, and who is no longer free to play in many of them, once you click that buy button once, it gets way easier to hit it again and again and again and again, right? So yeah, their goal is definitely to try and get you to make your first purchase, more
Yeah.
so than like any other purchase, really.
So,
And
yeah, sorry, continue.
yeah, no, like power is the easiest way to do it. General appeal is a pretty good way to do it. And I mean, this card doesn't check like all the boxes for that, but it's pretty close.
It goes in
Like
a
you
lot of
can't really,
stuff, yeah.
yeah, and it doesn't go in everything. Like you can't necessarily play it in some like big ramp into 6 cost thing necessarily, right? But like I don't know, if you're playing a deck with a curve, anything resembling a curve is probably going in your
Yeah.
deck, right?
Yeah, like, if you're
So
not playing, like, Electro or Phoenix Force or whatever, this is probably a card you play.
and then and stuff like Surtur is more interesting because it's clearly hyper targeted to a very specific niche that people may or may not be interested in doing. And Surtur also had the weird wrinkle of it being pretty heavily attached to Scar, and not everyone having that because that was a previous season pass card. So that's a whole other issue, but it's like maybe with stuff like that, that's like a little bit more niche. They're supposed to shoot a little bit higher because it might not be as broadly appealing to as many people. I don't know. But yeah, there were still like, I don't know, Wiccan Surtur decks that had like 3 ways to trigger it, maybe. And it's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
don't need to go like all in on this sort of thing. So it was still kind of checking those boxes too.
I do think that, like, when you look back at, like, the broken cards of the recent past, they're all archetype definers, right? You have Arishem, you have Surtur, You have Agent Venom. These are cards that are build arounds. And Iron Patriot is like kind of a build around, but it's kind of just like slap this in your Wiccan deck. Slap this in your Galactic Captain Marvel pile. Like slap this in your whatever you're doing. Just it's fine. You're good to go. And I think that is it's a much more worrying place to put power. Where I vastly prefer when they put power on things that are specific, right? Doom 2099 is a great example of a card people thought was going to be really strong. It was very good, but it's definitely not broken good. It's just good and worth doing and worth building around with very clear, here's how you beat it, here's how you don't kind of thing. But that requires so much of you in a way that this card does not. And so I'm not saying it's like, oh my God, this card is a problem, but it's also like, let's say you wanted to nerf it. A power nerf on this card matters so much. Going from 2/3 to 2/2 is like a death sentence. So what would the move be? Discount by 3? Like, there's knobs on the card, but power effectively isn't one, I think, unless they really want to obliterate it. And that's a little bit worrying to me. But all of that is to say that the last, 4 season passes we've had, if you count this one, have been just banger after banger after banger. Agent Venom, Surtur, Galacta, and this. 10 out of 10 season passes. They've been really hitting in terms of, like, if we assume their goal is to make season pass cards good enough that you want to buy them, they are definitely good enough that you want to buy them. And this card, I think, very much fits within that paradigm, to the point that I wonder if it'll force people to play more move bounce, to just sort of ignore that paradigm entirely. Like, yeah, go get your free guy, I don't care. But the thing about this free guy is that it's very good into decks like move bounce, because you basically don't ever have to worry about the condition. What are they going to contest you with? I guess Aranya Vulture. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. They got to do really specific stuff, and it forces them out of their typical play patterns in order to make that happen. And I think that's, that's a really, really, really interesting card to me. A card that is, like, pretty in-specific good into these sort of move bounce things that mid-range decks tend to struggle with. So, DLDR, card good.
Card good. How large of a metagame representation would you say that move bounce has?
Less large than it should.
Sure.
Ballparking it 10%, 15%.
Okay, that's still pretty high.
I think it is pretty high. But I also think it's, like, very localized to the top end. And I also think that, like, that would be in the Bruce Banner week where, like, the card effectively didn't come out. So people are just playing what they normally play instead of trying stuff with the new card. I think in a world where there was massive incentives to climb, that number would be very much higher, personally.
Yeah, it's I don't know. You talk about it a lot, and I understand, like, the deck is very strong.
Mhm.
I definitely agree with that, and I understand why it might be localized to high infinite, but I just haven't played a ton this
Mhm.
week, and especially just like high voltage being out too. I'm just like,
Sure.
oh, I'll just do my quest in there or whatever, and haven't been playing a ton on ladders. And but even outside of that, it's like I haven't played against it at all in like
Yeah.
the last 2 weeks or something.
2
And
weeks.
I'm at like in the 90s or
Uh,
whatever.
I think
So
it's
not the same
like,
as you, but
yeah, I think it's, like, super localized is the thing. Like, it's super localized because there's, like, 5 people at the top end of Infinite that play it a lot. You queue those 5 people a lot. And it's just one of those things where maybe,
yeah,
like,
not like not how much do you play against it,
oh, like,
but
what
across like all ranks.
across,
Like how
like,
much
all
does that
rank?
commit?
Oh god. What, like 3%?
Yeah,
I would
okay.
say it's pretty low. I
Yeah,
have
then
no
that's kind of what I was expecting.
I have no, like, actual knowledge of that. I guess maybe, like, if I had to say, like, across all ranks, assuming you have the cards, right? Like 6,000 or so collection level, assuming you've
Right.
got cards, maybe like 7 to 10%. That'd
Okay.
be, that'd be sort of where my
That's
head would be
that's
at.
still high. Yeah,
That'd be
it's
sort of
still
where
high.
my head would be at. I think it sees some reasonable play. Speaking of seeing some reasonable play, Victoria Hand is a 2. Is she a 2/2 or a 2/3? Oh my god. She's a
I thought it
2/3.
was a 2-3.
Yeah, she's a 2/3. I had her in my head as a 2/2. But yeah, no, she's a 2/3 with an ongoing ability that upgrades the cards you generate in your hand with 2 power. That's an ongoing ability, so you can like copy it. You can, spoiler alert, moonstone it. You can mystique it. You can onslaught it, and it will give +4 to your created cards. This is a card that's really interesting to me because I love Devil Dinosaur, and I really want an excuse to play Devil Dinosaur. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that to me, this represents the balanced team learning from Mockingbird and being like, okay, Thanos and Arishem do not get this card. And I think that's also very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if it was just created cards,
Yes.
be pretty nice.
Yeah.
When was the last time
Mm.
this is purely for my own benefit, but maybe the audience's too. When was the last time you talked about the first time you saw Devil Dinosaur?
I don't even remember the first time I saw Devil. You probably remember this better than I do. You can tell the story. I don't. You're doing a thing. What are you doing?
Do you remember Devil Dinosaur's original stats?
Yeah, it was a 3-0.
The first time you ever saw that card, we were in a Discord
Did
call.
I say it was bad?
You were like, you basically like audibly laughed at my opponent, which may or may not have been a bot too.
Sure.
I don't know. But you were just like, this card is unplayable. Why is it in their deck? And I was like, what do you mean?
Oh man, because you gotta understand, I have like 110 CL. All I knew was Zoo, and I thought bots were real people.
So dude, I thought everyone just knew how to snipe my Nightcrawler with Electra or whatever.
Okay, yeah, we did figure that out, but like by the time we figured that out, we were like 70 or 80. Like that was not a thing that we clocked for like 60 ranks.
No, so for context here, and the reason why it's maybe not so funny at the time, was that the only decks that we were playing were just like trying to get Hellbent as soon as possible.
Yes, we're playing a lot of Strong Guy.
Yeah, Blade, Strong Guy, like discard my Swarm, last turn play America Chavez, 2 Swarms or whatever. Biggest Strong Guy out there. And Cam was basically just like, yo, this thing sucks. I never have a hand. It just has 0 power. My opponent's so stupid. What are they doing?
Yeah, they're so fucking dumb. That's crazy.
And I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like you could maybe build a deck that doesn't do that kind of stuff. And you're basically just like, why? Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Strong Guy's so good.
Strong Guy is just as big. Hey, you know what? In my defense, I actually think that if we'd been in that metagame for a little bit longer, we might have actually seen that happen. Remember, this was what, 210 Strong Guy? 29 Strong Guy? He was big as hell.
It was big.
He was big as hell. This is not as insane as it sounds right now, okay? Like, it sounds completely insane. Devil Dino at the time was like a 313 or 312 a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
Strong Guy was like a 2-9. But
well, also then we saw Moon Girl too.
That is the card. That is the specific card, because Moon Girl at the time was a 3-3, and Marvel Snap had no card advantage. And so when you were playing against people.
Dude, Sentinel was cracked.
Yeah. And so like, since Marvel Snap had no card advantage, the fact that there was card advantage in the form of Moon Girl that then let you play twice as many cards as your opponent, completely insane at the time. And that's sort of when that deck started to like really pop off. We also had, if you remember, our virtual card advantage of Jubilee America Chavez.
Yeah, that was a nice interaction.
Virtual card advantage. For those who don't remember this one, Jubilee takes the card off the top of the deck. America Chavez's old wording at 10 power was that you didn't draw her until turn 6, but the way they implemented it was such that, like, it always sort of, if you would have drawn her, she stays on top of the deck instead. So, like, there's like a 62% chance or whatever that by turn 4, she just was on top of the deck when you played the Jubilee, and you just got her for free.
So start of game, deck gets shuffled, you draw cards, and if Chavez is ever the top card, you just draw the card under it, basically.
Yes.
And she just floats there. Yeah. It's like, okay, who the hell figured this out?
Yeah.
How?
I have no idea why it was like that. Like, there's no good reason to A, make that card, and B, have it work that way. Like, it's just a very, because it's like a card that is by basically any objective measure, one of the biggest design mistakes they've ever made in terms of their bottom line, I would say. A card that took up space in every deck, that everyone got for free, that also meant that every card they released would now have to displace a different card. They had effectively 11 card decks instead of 12 card decks. They probably have not made a mistake that big ever. And then,
Yeah, I mean,
to
it
compound
also
that,
just it made a lot of the games the same too.
Mhm. And then to compound that by implementing it in a like completely crackhead way is one of the coolest things that's ever happened. Like that is quintessential Marvel Snap beta to me. That's up there with Nexus events. Is like jubileeing your Chavez for no reason. Like there is
Yeah.
no reason why that should work. It is absolutely insane. And yet it does work that way. Here's my theory of why it works that way. Cable draws the bottom card, and they were like, well, we can't just put Chavez on the bottom because then Cable will draw it all the time. They didn't get to the Jubilee part of that. That is my theory.
Does Cable still draw the bottom though?
No, he draws the top now.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And Jubilee still hits the top, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, they Cable originally drew the bottom card, and everyone was like, this sucks. I like drawing cards, but I want it to be a card they would have actually drawn. Even though it's like, not to get into the math here, not very functionally different.
A dude I know started this ridiculous argument with me about just like playing Yondu in random decks.
Yeah, hell yeah. What if you hit it, right?
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
what if you hit their important
What
card?
if you
I was
hit
like,
it?
what if you help them draw their important card? And they're like, well, yeah, no, but like the games that you hit it, you win.
Well, yeah, but like,
I
what
was
if
like,
you hit
okay,
it,
well,
dude?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you're supposed to be a smart person. What are we talking
Dude,
about?
what do you not understand about this? What if you hit it? What if you hit it?
What if you burn their hella?
Yeah.
Okay, what about the games where you get them closer to hella? Like, I don't understand.
No, you are correct, but some people are just born gamblers. Anyway, we were supposed to be talking about Victoria Hand. We're talking about this.
Oh yeah,
now.
she cool.
Yeah,
she
she
cool.
She seems cool. Yeah.
Dino's still cool too. It's just you can't. It kind of works with Moon Girl, not really, but
Yeah.
like it does. It's just like a little slow, a little bad, a little vulnerable to a lot of things, right? So I don't know if in this world where V handing, if we're still literally dinoing, or if we're just doing kind of like dino stuff in spirit. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know. You could also just like play V hand with like Kate Bishop or something. Like, I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people in Snap make is like a card like Victoria Hand comes out and is like, got to build my entire deck around it. Every card has to like create cards in my hand or whatever. And it's like, nah, this is especially a lesson I think you've taught people repeatedly is like
Small
actually find the
package.
3 best cards that go in this package, put it wherever you want.
Yeah. That's a lesson that Annihilus taught me, really. Is like what that is a card that taught me that lesson, basically. It was just like stop over investing in this crap. Annihilus taught me that lesson, Ajax taught me that lesson, Anti-Venom taught me that lesson, but Annihilus is really the guy I want to credit with all of that. Sidebar. If they made Sentry a 410 again, like can we just do that? Yeah, like
please.
Bring my boy back. Bring my boy Annihilus back from the grave.
I used to just play Annie for the times, even if it was kind of bad.
You once sent me. See, if you could tell an embarrassing story about me, here's one about you. You once sent me a Thanos Annihilus deck, which I have never seen anyone cook anything exactly the same as this deck. It was a truly unique pile of cards. And it was just like, you know what? I bet you do beat Annihilus when you play your own Annihilus. And then I was like, damn. I bet that does work. I bet that does actually work.
You goddamn right.
Yeah.
I cook a lot, man. I cook a lot.
I never cook. I microwave. You know, I take an idea from 3 months ago and I throw that shit in the microwave for. I don't even like press the buttons. I just press the 30-second button until it gets to a number I'm kind of okay with. And then that's my YouTube
23,
channel.
Take it out. Yeah.
Yes, my YouTube channel. Like, it's just like, I'm just going to press the 30-second button on some stuff from like 3 months ago that I think might be good now. All right. I hit that reheat button.
So literally today in my Discord, uh,
Yeah,
we're talking about offshoots of a certain deck in Magic.
sure.
And this person was like, "Oh, have you tried this thing?" I just immediately sent them a screenshot of a deck list. And then they're like, "Oh, has anyone tried this thing?" Immediately sent them a screenshot of a deck list. They did it a third time with a different thing. Still had the deck list in the holster. Third
Sure,
different deck.
sure.
And they're just like, "Oh, you've just thought about everything." I was like, "Yeah, it's literally what I do in like every game I play."
Yeah, so like if you want like the seventh best Thanos deck, he's got that shit
Dog, I
on
got
lock.
you.
He's
I
got
got you.
he's got that shit. If you want just like a Thanos deck built for a matchup that is 7% of the metagame, he's got that.
Not even that. It's usually like an interaction that I like. I'm like, "Yo, can I make this good?"
Yeah,
Not even necessarily the best. I might be realistic about that,
sure.
you know? Uh, but I, I like Lockjaw quite a bit, you
Hmm.
know? I can't remember the last time I've seen someone play a Lockjaw that's
Good,
not me.
good.
But yeah, honestly, good.
Like,
3-2 Lockjaw, a little messed up, but still like the card. Still want to play it. Still want to give it some love, right? It's fun. And I don't there might just be times where I'm like, I'm feeling Lockjaw today. You know,
mhm,
like let's put together a Lockjaw deck. Let's try and make it the best it can. Realistically, if I cut this for literally any other card, is the deck probably better?
maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but who cares?
See, that's the opposite of
What
me.
am, what am
I'm
I
a
playing
micro.
for?
You're a chef. I'm a microwaver. That's the difference, right? Like I'll put something together. It'll be bad, and I'll be like, I'm never playing this shit again. I'll put.
I'll build you I'll build you the best Lockjaw deck you've ever seen, and I'll be honest with you, I'll be like, it's solidly tier 2, you know?
Mhm.
But it's fun as hell.
I will play 10 games of like Jean Grey, Rocket and Groot, and then just be like, "Yep, this is exactly as bad as I thought it was." It's
Yeah.
just all right. I know what a good deck feels like, and I know what this is. All right, like I can tell.
Jean Grey, especially with Rocket when they're both 3 drops,
Hmm.
is exactly the type of thing where people are like, "Yo, I think these 2 cards work together." And you're like, "Yeah, they would if this one just like costs 0."
Yes, like that's exactly the Jean Grey problem. Is like, okay, you have played your Jean Grey, but also in playing your Jean Grey, you failed to play your other 3 drop that would have been better. Like you
Yeah.
yeah, like I ran into that with a lot of Rocket and Groot decks actually, where it was like, okay, it's turn 3, it's time to Rocket and Groot, but I'd rather Hope Summers. Like it's just it came up a decent amount where it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's got a lot of things that go in decks that go with it that conflict with it on energy cost, which was unique.
True.
I guess we're
I
gonna
mean,
just elide the Victoria Hand conversation and come back to it later. And we're gonna talk about Rocket and Groot now.
maybe. Yeah, so it's interesting where, the Hope RNG thing, I don't really mind because you can just do whichever one you actually want more. Like maybe you have a draw that you don't really have a huge need for Hope for
Mhm.
potentially, and you can just play Rocket and Groot, or you play Hope and then you play like Rocket and Groot and Kitty in that location next turn. That's pretty good, right?
Mhm.
It's not bad. And in the meantime, if you're a deck where you like having high impact things to play on 3, they're kind of redundant in that regard. Some games you'll draw Hope as your only 3 drop. Some games you'll draw Rocket and Groot as your only 3 drop. When you draw them together, maybe it's kind of awkward, potentially, but they do kind of accomplish the same thing, just like very differently. And I've definitely run into that when building like the weirdo nonsense I was talking about before.
Yeah, so like when I run into it, is like, okay, I'm playing Hope Summers in my Kitty Pride, Angela, Athena, whatever deck, right? Hope Summers is there because we want to get to a 3 and a 4 on the final turn of the game. Because I'm also playing Galacta, I'm playing Gwenpool, I'm playing Captain Marvel, I'm playing Shang-Chi. And then and that's like 4/4 drops, right? And then you also have like Hope Summers herself at 3. You have Rocket and Groot at 3. You have probably a Juggernaut at 3. And so suddenly you have maybe a Red Guardian at 3. You have maybe a Cosmo at 3. You end up with a curve that is just like absolutely abysmal, despite the fact that it caps at 4. And that means you're so much more reliant on Hope Summers to make your curve not ass and make your
Yeah,
turn 6 have 7 energy, because your whole deck is a 4 plus a 3. That's what you want to be doing, like Shang-Chi Juggernaut final turn. And that's what I ran into a lot with Rocket and Groot. Not that I think he's bad. It's just like a lot of the things that you would think go with the card, they do, but they also like feel weird.
I think in smaller doses it might be good, but you're trying to put like everything in the same deck, and
Yeah,
it's only 12 cards, man.
only
But
12
like
cards.
at that point, it sounds like you're almost a Silver Surfer deck. Like you add
Yeah,
Silver Surfer, you now
yeah.
have 6/3 costs or
I don't
whatever.
know. I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you knew this, but Rocket and Groot cost 3, which means it goes in a Silver Surfer
Hmm.
deck. Are you familiar with the fact that Silver Surfer buffs 3 cost cards?
I am familiar with the fact that Silver Surfer desperately needs a good 2, and that Iron Patriot costs 2.
That is interesting, actually.
I
Yeah,
their
does it
problem is they
desperately
don't
need
have
a
like a
good two?
strong follow-up, right? But like then maybe you're more
They
incentivized to
have
play
Juggernaut. They
Gladiator
have
or whatever.
Negasonic. Every 3 can be a strong follow
Well,
up.
what is the likelihood that you have Prio with Negasonic? Juggernaut, sure. Gladiator, sure. Negasonic in Surfer,
Yeah,
it's sketch.
we're probably. I mean, I've seen people play Negasonic and Surfer, but you're probably right that we're not going to have Prio for
Yeah, but it's not like a turn 3, I'm gonna snipe your play.
it. Mhm.
It's I'm gonna play this on turn 5 along with something else, or turn 6 when I have
Yeah,
Prio.
like this goes in the lane where, but like the other thing with Surfer is there's just not enough. Like that's a deck that really suffers from 12 cards, where it's like it's got to invest so much. Right now, it's trying to run like 3/4 Galactic Gwenpool Absorbing Man, and that means it can only run like
Don't
one
play
one and 1/2. It's so tough.
don't play don't play Gwenpool.
Yeah, I mean, it'll give you a space for 1/1 and 2/2s. And even that's like just like ugh. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not pretty. I don't think any Surfer deck is gonna be pretty, you
Yeah.
know? This is asking you to play a lot of 3s, and you can get away with 6. I think you're like a 7 truther though, right?
A little bit. I am fine. I think the lowest I've played is 7. I think if you're gonna do like other stuff, sub themes in your Silver Surfer deck, like Craven's Scream or whatever, then you can go 6 if you're gonna be like building to be half an actual curve out mid range deck.
Dude, I've played Surfer as low as 4. I don't know what to tell you.
The hell were the 4?
Well, it was Surfer for sure, but I think this was more so like a weird Mr. Negative deck or something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like negative Surfer, the rules are sort of out there, the same with most
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Negative.
it's
Yeah,
it's way different, but
yeah.
for like a normal, pretty fair deck, like I'm certainly willing to go to 6. I've done that plenty of
Yeah.
times. 5, maybe. Like your power output would have to be really good, but it's doable.
I don't know if I like that. I feel like you could probably
It's
find
not
something
it's not
better.
pretty.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's pretty.
I do think Rocket and Groot has struck me as quite strong. I will say that much. Like it feels like old Nocturne, where it's just like, I like this card. I like not running the risk of getting clogged. I like that I can put it in a space throne and move it out. I like all that stuff. I like the fact that it just like gets some power on it. I do think that in playing with the card, I don't know how they could have smoothed this over. I don't really think they could have. But the fact that you have to know priority for the first turn of the card, and that matters for whether or not you're going to get its effects, and then on every other turn with moving it, priority doesn't matter at all. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think it could have been any other way, but it is like, I don't know if I were a new player, if I would find that to be all that intuitive.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing that I actively thought of. Like, I'm more so concerned with whether or not I have prio on the first turn I play it. And I guess it was just kind of a given to me that you wouldn't need prio after that. But yeah, it is pretty weird.
Yeah, it's just a
And
little bit
I don't
odd.
know. All the move staging stuff has been I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure how to fix it. It's all just strange.
My answer is I feel like it is better than when it was what it was before. I feel like that is
Where you could like
mostly
play
because
Craven, then move a thing.
yeah, that stuff, the like move Nocturne last deal that we used to have. The fact that if you moved an ongoing card to New York and then tried to Taskmaster it, it wouldn't actually happen. It would just not like I've lost games on like I have this giant null, I move it to New York, I play Taskmaster, it copies and it's 0 because it's not there. And like that was some sort of bug with the old
Aw.
implementation that they fixed with whatever it is they've done now. Because apparently cards just hovered in place and didn't exist. This was the other thing, ongoing specifically, like you'd move it to New York and someone would Shang-Chi to New York, you'd like move your Devil Dinosaur with 15 power. But if they had priority, your move wasn't done and the dinosaur didn't have an ongoing, so it was 3, and then the move would finish and it would gain all its power back. That's how it used to work. It sucked. So it is
Yeah, so
better.
just Shang-Chi's just like, I missed.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it is better. Like it's definitely better.
It's
Uh,
cleaner for sure. It
yes.
is way cleaner. I think it makes a lot more sense in terms of like, think about how you have to explain this to someone, right? It's like, well, it mattered the order in which I moved my card because I played Craven first, you see, and then, but it's like the
I mean, I
Craven's
think it's
face
actually pretty
down
easy to
and the card's already
explain.
moved there.
Things happen in the order you do them. That is easy to explain. It's actually, I think, harder
But
to explain this one.
visually, it does not look like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I did not know the Craven thing worked because I knew that if I played a card and then moved a card, the card would be face down and it would look like the card was already moved there. So I had no reason to think that it would work with Craven.
Yeah.
And so I always just moved the card first, then played my cards. And then I find out later that the Craven thing works. And I'm like, why? Because the card already moves. But like visually it's there. But like you said, yeah, it's just kind of like hovering, especially with the
Yes.
ongoing or whatever. It's like, oh, it's off in ethereal space or whatever. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, I do think that on the whole, removing that was a nerf to decks that like to lie about where their power is, which is probably a good thing.
Agreed. Nerf
And
that shit.
all of that is to say, to circle back to Rocket and Groot, card's just good, right?
I think the other thing that I just undersold about it is that you play it in a location. Ideally, you have prio. Maybe you ding him for a point or two, and then you move away, and he's got a bunch of power, and he also impacted the location that he was at before.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like a lot of impact when you look at a 3/3 body,
It
right?
is a really frustrating card to play against. You're just like sitting there and it's like they move it into your Angela lane and you're just like, shit. They put it in your Hope Summers lane. Like it's just you just never want to play in the lane the guy is in and you're never actually sure where he's going to be. And actually playing with him is like how aggressive do I want to be with this move? Because I know they're not going to play in the lane where I have the guy right now. So if I
Yeah,
move him, I'm
exactly.
going to get some dudes. Like
I,
it's a very interesting card.
decent amount of spots where, yeah, they're definitely not going to play in Rocket and Groot's location on turn 4, right? So you can just immediately move it and kind of like coin flip
Yeah.
effectively. Uh, but yeah, maybe you have a read and it's like, well, I can just almost certainly lock up this location if I just move this thing over there. Maybe that means that they don't play there on turn 5. Maybe I even lose the coin flip on turn 4 for where they choose to play. Who knows? But maybe just like locking up that location immediately is good enough for you. It's like maybe that's even like a snap condition in some cases, right?
Yeah, and in like decks that really care about like specific locations, like for example, a Clog deck or a Galactus deck. You put the rocket there, if they're not playing in the freaking lane, you move the rocket out of the play, you Galactus them. Like this is
True.
like
I
there's a
think
lot of that.
I think Galactus was the last card I acquired, so
Ah,
I'm not a Galactus gamer.
that's ethical. That's the ethical way to do card acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately comes down to RNG, right? I feel like
No, ethics.
if Galactus was the first card I got, things might be a little different.
No, ethics. It's a purely ethical decision by you. A worse person would have opened Galactus sooner.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But what about like the person who's uh deciding, like watching my Snap account and deciding which cards I open?
Oh, Glenn? I mean, I just give him a
Yeah.
call. Be like, never give Jerry Galactus. That's me and
Okay.
Glenn. We're boys. Like we go
Word.
bowling. We hang out. One time, someone told me that I looked like a 10 years younger version of Glenn, or something. I think what they said was actually more insulting. They were like, "You look like Glenn looks like he time traveled back from the past to give a warning to his younger self, or something to that effect." And I mentioned it on Twitter, and Glenn saw it and said, "Ouch." And that's our closest interaction. That's where I think about that every so often. It's like, you know how like some people lie awake and remember their social faux pas. I'm not a lie
Mhm.
awake person. They just sort of always hover there. And so that's one that I remember. I recall this one.
Yeah, I'm more of a hover there kind of person too,
Mm,
until I completely forget about it, and then thank God.
yeah.
Uh,
Like me, Devil Dinosaur. You know, all the greats have a short term memory. I didn't even remember getting that wrong. For all I'm concerned, you made that up. It's not true. We only have your word.
Dude, I feel like I bring it up like probably when I guessed it on your stream, maybe when I was on
That
the
was
snapshot
a
the one time.
year and a half ago. How many
Yeah,
things from a year and a half ago do you remember?
not a lot. I remember that one though, because you're like, this card is unplayable, and I'm like, I think this card's pretty good. I feel like I want this
Oh,
to be the next card I open. I
ah,
like we were just on such dynamic opposite sides. Anyway,
and
one of
obviously I was
the
right.
one of the funnest times in my life
Hmm.
was the 3 months where, Glenn Jones had moved to Seattle, but before he had started working for Wizards of the Coast.
Mhm.
And, uh, we just drove around to these little local tournaments and just, like, beat up on kids. And then, he would, like, lose in top 4 and then drive me home complaining about how he got mana screwed. I'm just like, "Yeah, man, I was there. I
Hell yeah,
watched it."
brother. Man, he
It
really
was
is
it was
me.
awesome, though.
He
Dude, it
really
was so
is
much fun.
me. Losing
It was
top
so
4,
much fun.
complain about how much you got mana screwed? Oh my god. That's so relatable.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very relatable
That's
behavior, and
that's
it's
so
like, I
real.
don't know.
He's so real for that. All right. Uh we're 50 minutes into this podcast that I originally intended to be mostly mailbag stuff.
Oh,
So, let's do some mailbag stuff. I've
real
got
quick,
yeah.
can I mailbag question you real quick?
I mean, it's not like a mailbag. It's like a I don't know what you call it. That's yes, you are the co-host of this podcast. You're allowed to ask me questions.
Hey, KM, long time listener,
Yeah, first time
first
caller. Yeah,
5th time caller, I guess,
sure.
because we've
Yeah,
done this 5
yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah.
One thing I thought about, in regards to Iron Patriot after we stopped talking about it, but I think is kinda cool, is, like, if your opponent plays turn 1 Hydro Bob, do you
Yeah.
just auto snap on turn 2 now?
I don't know how. Here's what I want to know. Like I'm with you there, but Iron Patriot Hydra Bob, is it resolving in play order? So Hydra Bob comes down on turn 1. If you snap on 3, does the Iron Patriot check before Hydra Bob moves or the other way?
I have no idea. My rationale was like, oh, this is a scumbag Hydra Bob player. They're probably also a scumbag Iron Patriot player, especially if I right click
Right.
info them and see that they're like 20K collection level. I was like, yeah, you're definitely a scumbag. You're not putting Hydra Bob in your deck if you're not playing Iron Patriot, right?
Well,
I mean, you are probably, but like,
I have bad news for you about the stat line 1-5.
listen, you know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, you're playing Hydra Bob. It means you're playing Iron Patriot. They do work well together
They
in
do.
theory.
Yes. They do.
So
They
if
do.
someone plays a Hydro Bob on turn 1, it's reasonable to assume they're going to follow it up with Iron Patriot. So like you wait out the clock a little bit, get them to commit to playing the Iron Patriot. I guess they can take it back
Yeah.
after you snap.
Yeah, they
I don't
ruined
know.
it. They ruined
Or
it
they
with the
can snap
snapback.
back, but it makes it interesting,
It
right?
does
It's
make
still a
it
coin
interesting.
flip.
But that's why I was asking about the ordering, right? Because they could try to snap it back onto that lane. And if that happens before the Patriot,
Yeah, I don't know if it's play order. I would imagine it can't be, right? Because Hydra
how the
Bob has
hell would I
to.
know?
I don't know. It's like a move thing. It feels weird to check after everything. I don't know.
I got no idea.
After
Actually,
after our Jubilee discussion and all that
mhm.
stuff, it's pretty clear I don't understand how things actually work until someone tells me.
Yeah, like the Craven stuff is crazy. You did know Devil Dinosaur was good though, so you get points for that. Moving on to a section we're calling the Snapback, which I only know as like a type of hat that I have not worn since the year 2009, right? Like
I
this
don't like
is
them.
they have a certain connotation, but also I think it's kind of a fun little name, and I'm gonna keep rolling with it. So we're gonna call it the Snapback until further notice, which we can abbreviate as like SUFN. Snapback until further notice.
Okay.
Trust me, it works. Everyone's gonna remember it. Nobody's going to be confused. All right.
Cool. Sounds
Yes.
great.
Yes.
I'm in.
Okay. So I have several questions from our viewers that we're just going to go through until we either get tired of doing it or whatever. What MTG keyword would you like to see introduced in Marvel Snap?
I kind of almost brought this sort of thing up in terms of the Iron Patriot conversation and
Mm,
like whether or not it's a new mechanic, because stuff like discard and move and all those things, like those make sense for what the game engine is and everything. And it's like, if you're trying to make a new mechanic for Marvel Snap, what would it actually be? And I mean, there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, oh, end cards in your hand or end cards in your graveyard, something like that. It's like, yeah, you could do that, but in terms of like move when this is discarded, like those are kind of like build around mechanics, right?
yeah.
That's that. I don't know if there's like a differentiating name between these things, but there's like the build around mechanic and just like, I don't know, like ongoing is a mechanic, right? But it works on a bunch of different cards. It is just like this thing has a static
Well,
ability.
I think this question is much more limited. If you could bring a mechanic or a keyword from Magic into Marvel Snap, just pick one. Because I picked one. You ready?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it would be hard to do that.
Sure.
So I'm excited to hear your answer, but that was all my point was.
Oh,
Go ahead.
flanking.
So this is like the literal terminology of like getting surrounded by all sides kind of thing.
I think that they should add cards that give like adjacent. I think they should keyword claw. I think they should keyword claw, Mr. Fantastic, stuff that affects adjacent lanes.
Okay.
That's not actually what flanking is, but that is what I would call it, or something like that.
Well, flanking is not really what flanking is in Magic either.
That's
So
fine. I was gonna say banding as a gag. The thing is, I actually said flanking as a gag, thinking it was banding, and now I'm being forced to like ad lib and improv an actual justification for it.
banding kind of exists, honestly.
Really?
There's like merge in symbiote Spider-Man,
That's
that's
not
kind of like
banding,
banding,
though. It's
dude.
I
That's
guess
kind of banding.
of all the mechanics for us to take, banding existing is like I wouldn't have expected that. We don't have combat damage is the frustrating thing. Maybe spells. Are spells a mechanic? Not a
I
keyword, but
would
like I would like to
okay.
cast a spell.
I would love spells, but Snap is very limited in the amount of ways that you can like harass your opponent,
Yeah.
you know? Because a lot of the spells, like sure, someone would be like, all right, pump your thing or whatever. The next thing you play is cheaper or gets bigger or whatever. You could do a lot of that stuff, but there's not going to be a lot of like kill your opponent's thing or
Yeah.
uh afflict your opponent's thing. Like there's not going to make a bunch of those
Well, it's like they have cards that are basically spells already, is the thing. Like,
with a terrible body, which
yeah,
is a
like
punishment, a
White
downside.
Tiger and Ironheart or whatever. But the more cards they make, like Cersei or Blink, or cards that repurpose those bodies, the harder it is to make a card like that. So, why not just make a spell that, like, does a thing and then doesn't run that Cersei Blink risk of, like, we balance this card around its terrible body and then then we like turned it into a 6-drop or whatever.
Yeah, I think they could make a lot of different spells, like something like Arcane Missiles. I think is the name from Hearthstone. It's like one, it deals 3 damage
Oh, like a
spread,
hazmat that did like
like
pew pew pew. Yeah.
randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's just like you drag the card up
Yeah.
because they don't want you to target anything, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you have a bunch of like low impact kind of spells like that, then the game foundation needs to change a little bit, where like 12 card decks with like some kind of
Oh,
garbagey
yeah.
spell, right? Like you're going to need either bigger decks, probably bigger hand size if some of your cards are going to be like lower impact. uh you could do weird stuff where it's like, I don't know, on even number turns you draw a spell from your spell deck or just something
See,
like
now
that,
you've got it's just too complicated. I don't think we can do
it is
spells.
really, I'm just saying
Yeah.
like these are different ways you could possibly implement it.
I don't know. When I think of like some of the like the minute you said the word spell deck, I was like, it's over.
Yeah, I'm off it, but
It's
it could be
over.
like a high voltage thing too,
Sure.
it doesn't have to be the main game mode. I like the main game mode.
Sure.
Uh, Mechanics I like in Magic though, like anything graveyard related, I just kind of love. Just like having another spot that is a resource is awesome to me. So you're talking about White Tiger, like Cersei my White Tiger.
Yeah.
I kind of like that too, where you're putting a pretty bad body on the board, and sometimes it is a detriment actually, but then finding ways to like repurpose it. Like that stuff is like
Yeah,
super fun and
like
exciting for
Lockjaw.
me. Yeah. Lockjaw. Dude, Wasp. Don't get me started on Wasp.
Yeah.
I'm a surgeon with a wasp, dude.
I'm sure you are. Uh, do you think it'll help if Snap went back to only 3 new cards a month versus a new one the first week of a new season? Also, maybe this could help with card acquisition. Maybe have some kind of Series 5 shard token you can collect and turn in for the card of your choice. Second Dinner could also price cards differently to keep up with making money. Uh, so I think this question actually gets to like a really interesting point to me, which is one of the things I saw a lot when Bruce Banner came out was people saying like, "Thank God I don't have to buy this crap." Like, thank God I get a week to save. And that is like, again, that's not what you would expect. The expectation from like, Second Dinner is all our cards need to be good so people want to buy them, but people don't have enough currency to buy them, so they'll spend money on our stuff. But there's like a large sector of people who will simply just do without rather than spending money on our stuff. And that large sector of people loves easy skips. It's their favorite thing in the world. And I just think that that's a really interesting thing to know.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like Homie's got a movie coming out, kind of, right? Or I guess it's Red Hulk. That's
Yeah,
in
that's not the same guy.
That's a Hulk. Whatever.
Sure.
Dude, I stopped paying attention. I'm not going to the theaters anymore. I'm not. Disney Plus makes it too easy, you know?
Sure, yeah.
I just
Not
wait 3
sponsored.
months.
Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored.
Oh,
Uh,
no. Dude, very not sponsored. I don't even pay them. I just use my friend's account.
the opposite of sponsored, really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, so I guess it's not that bad, but I thought it was kind of funny for a second where it's like he's got a movie coming out and his card sucks and no one wants it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's gotta not be great for them. But
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Banner's barely a character even in the movie he's in. Like, it's all about the Hulk to the point that he just becomes the smart Hulk because they're like, screw it. We don't even want you transforming. It sucks. We can't market Bruce Banner, but we can sell the Hulk. So he's just the Hulk all the time.
I mean, that's got to be a misstep on their part, right?
I think it's because they don't have the full rights to, like, if I'm not mistaken, they're contractually obligated to not ever make Bruce Banner the main character of anything.
Sure, but I don't know. It's like when Iron Man is doing Iron Man things, that's cool. When Tony Stark is doing Tony Stark things, that's cool.
Yes, but he gets to do that because he has the luxury of having his own movies. Bruce Banner is not allowed to have his own movies because of some contractual rights thing. So he's
Yeah.
always got to be a secondary character. And when you're a secondary character, they give you the punchiest version of you can be. So he's just always the Hulk.
Yeah, you just don't get the character
Yeah.
development or anything because they don't actually want people to get attached and they make your cards
Well,
2 cost 1 power things.
also, when they tried to do the character
Brutal.
development for the Hulk, it was almost entirely in the context of the Black Widow character, Natasha Romanoff, written by Joss Whedon, implying that she was a monster for being infertile. So they just gave up after that, I think. After Age of Ultron, they were just like, just you're the Hulk all the time. We don't care. It's fine. Go be the Hulk. You're the Hulk forever.
There's a lot to unpack there, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about contracts, obviously. Yeah, if you can't be the main character and I don't know, you're not that super priced into making sure that this character sells in Snap, then yeah, I guess it's
Yeah.
okay for him to be a skip, but still like a marquee character. So
Yeah. The
kind of odd.
the short answer to the question is they're never going back to 4 or to 3. Why would they do that? Why would they be
Yeah,
like,
so
we need to make less money?
yeah, ultimately the the question kind of started with a flawed premise where it's like, would it help if? And it's like, depends who you trying to help.
Yeah. Yeah, like it probably helped the people who don't have enough currency to spend on getting every card. It would definitely help you if they release less cards. That would mean that you would be closer to collection complete. It would help you. But
Yeah,
their
and
job
this
is
this
not to do that.
yeah, this person mentioned that like maybe if cards in general were like a little more expensive or like harder to get,
Mm.
would that help? And it's like, yeah, but we kind of talked about this earlier where I think it is way better for you to have things that are very enticing that are at the lowest price point possible to get people to cross that threshold into being a person who has purchased an item in your game, because they're more likely to feel committed to playing it and just be like stuck.
What was one moment during a card game or video games you had a genuine moment of growth as a human? Love the podcast. I will note at this point, I should have taken down people's names. I deeply apologize for not taking down people's names and depriving you of the shout outs you so richly deserved. What I did was go through the YouTube comments and copy the comments themselves into a notepad. And now I'm looking at it and I'm realizing I'm not actually reading out anybody's names. I do apologize for that.
I get it though, because you try and copy paste like that, the full copy paste
Yeah,
into Notepad, it's going to be
it looks
hideous.
terrible. It doesn't work. And I was just like, oh, I'll just go get the questions. And I'm realizing now I should be giving these people credit for their names. And I deeply apologize for not doing that. However,
But hey, you know who you are.
yes,
Take solace
this
in
is
that.
this is a genuine moment of growth as a human that I'm having right now. Uh,
Yeah.
I'll tell you one. I've got one for me. In 2011, I think, Gavin Verhey wrote an article on Star City Games called "What We Deserve," and I genuinely find that to be the most meaningful and arguably only thing you can learn from card games, which is deserve isn't real. You don't deserve to win because you played better. The reason you're playing these games is in part because of the randomness. There's no God up there. The God of card games is not sitting up there telling you that you're divinely ordained to win this card game. You show up, you do your best, and sometimes you play really well and lose, and sometimes you play really badly and win, but sometimes you play really well and win. And that's what you do it for. And I'm, abbreviating the article massively. I think it's like one of the few pieces of card game writing that is beyond what I would call typical card game. Like here, it's a deck list.
It's great.
It's a deck list.
Legitimately great.
And I think that article is the one that represented a genuine moment of growth as a human. That is, I would draw a direct line to who I am today to that article. I think actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like my growth in a lot of ways did not come necessarily from reading articles. There
Really great
was
endorsement of your former profession.
no. Let me finish, man. It was from the lived experience of doing these things, where it's just like you are younger than I am.
Yeah.
So these articles kind of existed or were already coming out. Magic writing was established by the time that you started being in it. When I started playing Magic, it was on like email chat rooms or whatever. Like, right? Not email chat rooms, but like Usenet, whatever the hell you refer to that
I have
as.
no idea what that word means. Like I know it the same way that like the child of a sorcerer knows like an arcane language, you know? Like I don't know
Yeah.
what Usenet actually is. I know the
Well,
word.
I don't either. I don't either. I just knew that like that's where articles were, and I like read some of them or whatever.
Sure.
But like I couldn't tell you, how it's built or why people used it or
Right.
anything.
So like by the time
I
you were like good and it had grown, this infrastructure wasn't there for you.
Yeah, like so then sites were popping up and people were allowed to write articles, but they weren't writing like good articles. Like there's the occasional diamond in the rough. There are like some very, very good tournament reports, for example, some very, very good deck guides or whatever. But in terms of uh talking about kind of like life stuff in regards to magic or gaming, like they probably just wouldn't even publish it, I think, in a lot of instances. But no, that stuff is really, really good. People started doing it more and more, became kind of like more of like the writing meta or
Mhm.
whatever, was just kind of like these theory pieces that were not even necessarily about magic. And it's just like I lived a lot of the stuff before people actually wrote about it. Right. So in terms of like all the stuff that Gavin wrote, it's just like I'm just nodding along as
Yeah.
I read it, because this is stuff that like yes, I too went through the same experience he did, and it is very rocky, where it's there's a bunch of like weird curves in like growth and skill level, right? Where it's like you're very bad and you think that you're bad, and then you get kind of good and think that you're really good, and then you get a little bit better than that, and then you realize how bad you actually are, you know? And then it just like goes up and down and up and down. And uh eventually you get to a point where you're like a little bit more self-aware and a little bit smarter, your sense of analytics is a little bit better, and you're able to actually like properly identify stuff like that where it's like, oh, I don't deserve shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn. Like,
Yeah.
not everyone has that realization, but a
Yeah.
lot of people are set up to at least like be able to take that in at some point. And if you're lucky enough, maybe you have good people around you who are able to like help instill that in you, perhaps. You know, like I'm sure Gavin was a very good influence to his friend group because he's capable of writing articles like that. And to people like you, passing that on to you, where it's like, y'all, I don't remember where he's actually from. I mean, he's in Seattle now, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But like he's so far away from like all these people. And this article, I'm sure, was read by people like all around the world, right? And it's like they're never gonna meet him, they're never gonna be uh influenced by him directly necessarily, but he is able to do this. And that is awesome. And maybe they have that change before they would necessarily have to live it themselves. But yeah, I happen to be the opposite, where it's just like I just did a lot of stuff like when I was 30 and was like old, grizzled, like, oh, I think I know everything.
Mm.
Gavin was 14 or something. I don't know.
I I think like you talked about like the sort of treadmill of magic content a little bit there, and one of the things that sticks in my mind is like right after writing what I would consider like a seminal piece of magic literature, the next article is just like, here's my preview card for New Phyrexia. Let's do decks about it. And it's just like, it's so sick. It was Urabrask, by the way. But it's just like, I'm so struck by that, where it's like, you could do something that I consider very meaningful, and then the next week you still got to go back to the slop mill.
Yeah, no, listicles, you know, it's like, I can imagine being a director, right? And it's like, oh, I'll do like, I don't know, some artsy film thing, like some Sundance winner or whatever. And then you're just, yeah, doing slop on your next project. And it's got to feel some kind of way.
That's Chris Evans. That's Chris Evans. The MCU is the slop, and Snowpiercer is him being good.
Sure. Yeah, actors is kind of whatever, I guess. I was thinking about directors specifically, you know, where it's just like, oh, you've made this like cinematic masterpiece with like all these like beautiful shots and whatever, and then you're just like, here's the Rock flexing or whatever. Like,
hell yeah, brother. We've got 3 people signed on to this movie that all have clauses in their contracts that say they can't lose fights. That's your problem now.
Yep. They're just like, yeah, what is my life? And yeah, it was much smaller scale, but magic writing was like that too.
Yeah. I would love Gerry's game design and balance perspective on what the hell they can do with Kang.
So Marvel Snap is cool because it has this very deep intellectual property to draw from, right? And there is so much space to mine there in terms of like characters and power and flavor and stories they can tell. It's just all right there for the picking, right? And Kang has a lot of it. And I think it just depends on how deep they want to go down the flavor well. And I guess especially now, Card has been dead for how long?
Ever?
Like how long has it been out? Because it's almost as long as that.
Yeah, it has been. Okay. So it came out, I want to say April 2023.
You asked me about Kang when I was on the snapshot. I remember that.
Sure. I want to say April 2023, in that range, right? Like I want to say it came out in the height of Shuri Thanos meta, and that feels April 2023 to me.
Yeah. So, a little over a year and a half, probably.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, if you were going to rework this card, ideally you want it to come back in a big way. We just talked about how, season pass cards, the way you incentivize people is like you can do like cool things like very niche but very powerful things, or just like general mass appeal. And I think they have a lot of the same goals there for bringing Kang back, because if you rework Kang and still no one really plays with it, it's just like, why'd you bother? You probably just sunk a bunch of hours into this for no real reason, right? So if you're going to do it right. And then hopefully you don't have to go back to the well. So that is what I would assume that they're doing, is what I would try and do.
I've got a Kang pitch.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, how flavorful do you actually want to be? And can you find a design that is evocative but also strong, because even if it is like, oh, this is cool, flavor slam dunk, never going to put it in my deck, that's a failure, right? So kind of ideally it would be the best of both. It could just be a strength thing. You could also just make a strong card and just be like, like Kang got written out of the movies too. So it's like a lot of people probably just don't even know who Kang is. So who cares?
I've got a pitch.
Timmy.
It's a card that they just take like 5 designs for like Lasher type cards, and they say every month Kang is a different card, and then at the end he's gonna be whichever one you guys like the most.
Oh, that's kind of sick.
It's
I might
so
do
sick.
it for so I might do it for a shorter amount of time, because I don't like 5 months is like a drag on time. And I think a card for a month, especially if it's like, well, this is clearly the worst Kang, everyone knows it, can we just skip and go to the next month, right? It's just maybe like 2 weeks.
What about the month of Kang? You take like a 5-week season and you have each week new Kang. And then at the end of the season, everyone votes. They get 1 vote per account on what final Kang should be.
Games, I don't want to call this a mistake. I want to say like games mess this up, but like I don't know if it is actually them messing up, where they can't do voting in client in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Which is really annoying to me as a player. Again, play a lot of mobile games, and anything that asks me to like go open a browser or like go to their website, no.
Okay,
I'm not doing it.
Secondary pitch, you get 100 credits for voting.
Okay.
Yeah, you might not do that, but I see so many people share their stats for 100 credits on Twitter or whatever, and it's
Listen, you can just click the share button and not click the Twitter button, right? You still get paid. Did you know that?
I did not know that, actually. I never do it. Why would I know that? I never share my stats anyway. What do I care about 100 credits?
Dude, I like seeing my stats. I like when you're shit-talking Doc Ock at 510.
Yeah.
And then I go check my stats, and it's like, yo, you won 95% of the games you played with Doc Ock. And I send that to
you. You won 95% of the games in which you resolved a Doc Ock. That's a different thing.
That's pretty good.
That's not the same thing.
If I play a card, I win 95% of the time.
It also wasn't 95%, but whatever.
No, it was like 91 or 89. It was high. It was higher than I thought. I was like, I like this card. I did not think it was 90% good. Anyway, yeah, just click share and then just X out of that stuff and then don't spam people.
Anyway, I see tons of people doing that. I bet if you gave 100 credits for doing that, you'd get a very representative sample of Marvel Snap players.
You know how many credits I get per day? Probably 25.
I have no idea.
It's not 75 by logging in 3 times. In theory, if I log on 3 times a day, I get 75, right? I ain't doing that.
Yeah, I've never got, there's not been a single day since they made that change where I've gotten 75 credits.
No, it's happenstance if I log on and the red dot is there.
Yeah, it's happened actually 0 times. I've never gotten 75 credits. I would be surprised if I'd gotten 50 credits out of a day.
Yeah, I've gotten 50 for sure. A few times.
Why?
75?
I do not understand why they can't just let it stack. Like, I get it. I get why they don't want to let it stack. That ruins the point of it, whatever. However, have you considered that this sucks?
That's what I'm saying. If you make the voting in-app, cool. I'm in. Right? I think that idea is cool. I would definitely try and workshop it, because like maybe it's better with 4. Just try and figure out that you get the right amount so that people aren't like Kang fatigued, and make sure that like at least 3 of the options are hella good, and then you also have the added side benefit of like, oh, 1 and 2 was neck and neck. It was so close.
Go make that second another card. Yeah.
Or maybe you make a Kang, like Doom 2099, like that kind of thing. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I want.
I initially did not like your idea. I was going to backpack off it, where I like cards that change. Like Nico is awesome.
Yeah.
It is awesome. And they could do so much more in that space. I like the cards that shuffle things into your deck
Hmm.
that are pretty powerful. Not like Mjolnir necessarily, because it's like, yeah, you made my Thor powerful, but the hammer kind of sucks, right? But I told you about this. There was a game in the Elder Scrolls Legends card game that was a one mana, one power thing that shuffled 3/1/3s into your deck that when they ETB'd, you drew a card. It's like on reveal, draw a card, effectively. And it was like, yeah, this card is super sick. And it just makes the games way more fun where it's like, oh, I drew two of these guys early. I just kind of popped off. It ruled. So you make a Kang that, I mean, it's like Thanos or whatever, but like, yeah, just 4 cost Kang that changes every turn in your hand or something. And they're all pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. The problem
I'm
with
in.
doing that, like I've thought a lot about those. And there are two pitches that I see a lot for Kangs because I'm very active in the Marvel Snap Discord server. So this comes up a lot. And the first pitch I see is like, okay, it's a 4-drop or a 5-drop, and it's like constantly changing between a set of cards, right? But that sucks because it's sitting in your hand. You watch it go away from the thing you want it to be, and now it's no longer going to be that thing. Like it works on Nico because you are always going to be able to play Nico. There is never a turn in the game where you're not able to play that 1-cost card and get the effect you actually want. But if Nico cost 4 and you needed the draw 2 and you got the draw 2 on turn 2, you'd be like, this sucks. This card sucks, and the feeling of it is bad. And the
Here's the
second,
trick, though.
Mm.
Here's the trick, though. Nico and Kang, this hypothetical Kang, would be very different in that because Nico is so cheap, some of the options have to be kind of bad. Not true on this Kang.
I mean, okay, so let's say you're just making a Kang and all the options are generically good. They're going to be generically good in different ways, though. Like, one of them is going to be generically good, like a 4-mana Spider Woman or whatever. One of them is going to be a 4-mana Devil Dinosaur. One of them's a 4-mana Legion. All that stuff, right?
Sure.
There's still going to be ones that you want that you're not going to be able to get because you saw them earlier in the game.
Probably, but not enough that you're going to feel bad about it.
I don't know. I worry about that. And by the same token, people also pitch like a Kang that costs whatever the turn is, which I like. I think that's actually a sick idea, but I can't
That's cool
figure out
too.
I can't figure out how to do that without making it instantly the best 6 in the game. Because it's like a 6 that also isn't a 6.
Sure. Yeah. I kind of I see what you're saying, but like say for example, it was like power and cost equal to the turn count,
Then it would just be terrible, right?
depending on what the abilities are.
Sure. I was thinking like if you made Kang like literally just the vanilla curve as a card, that card would probably be pretty good. Like on turn 1 it's Misty Knight, on
It's
turn you like
maybe, but it's not flashy or exciting. And if they bring it back, people are not going to care.
correct. But also it's just like that's how hard it is to make a card in that shape, I think.
Agreed. No, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I
Yeah.
think that anything that is like modal or weird or cangy is going to
Mhm.
be difficult. And there's probably a reason they haven't reworked it in a year and a half.
I kind of my suspicion as to the reason is it's just like anything that would be good enough isn't cool enough, and anything that would be cool enough isn't good enough. Because like whenever I hear pitches for Kangs, it's been a long time since I heard a pitch for a Kang, and I was like, yeah, that's sick. They could actually do that. Everything there's always holes to poke in it, right? Even the cool ones, there's always holes to poke in it. That's why my pitch wasn't actually related to the card itself, and was instead trying to just be like, look, this card is like an open wound on the game. Let's take that and turn it into a festival. And it's just like an event people care about now. And
Yeah.
instead of being like garbage.
Well, it also like raises awareness for people where you might not know or might not care, but because this thing is going on and like, hey, oh, you get to be involved and maybe like you get to vote, every vote counts
Yeah.
or whatever. You could also do it in such a way where like during this period, everyone gets to play with Kang, whether or not they have it, right? So you get to at least
Yes.
test out the card. Ideally, what they would do is just give Kang to everyone.
Okay, well, let's not get too
But
crazy now.
But if you don't want to do that, certainly have it on sale, sell it for $5. I don't know, whatever. You could also do a thing if you're feeling kind of generous, is that if the one that you voted for wins, then you get it for free. But I think that creates bad incentives.
Yeah, that's really bad incentives. That's like Reddit is going to rig the vote bad incentives.
Oh yeah.
Kang I voted bundle, where he's like mugging at the camera.
Is there a President Kang?
Oh my god,
there's got to be, right?
There has to be a President Kang. There has to be. But yeah, that should absolutely happen. I'm talking myself into this. I don't even care what the card ends up being. They just need to do something cool with it.
Yeah.
Do it next December. Merry Kangsmas.
Corny, but I like it. It's their style.
Yeah. They would absolutely do that. That is entirely the thing they would do. We need more sports here. Who are your guys' way too early Super Bowl predictions?
Lol. I was really into sports as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered video games and card games, and I did not care about sports anymore. I played sports when I was in elementary school too, and then quickly realized that we are way too poor for that shit and sports are expensive. So I stopped doing that. But like there were periods where I collected sports cards and like knew the price of every card. I'm talking about like memorize the Beckett price guide kind of stuff.
See, I think sports are cool because they're the socially acceptable version of what we do, where like if guys get together and talked about, Magic cards from 1996, 1998, nerds, human trash, scum of the earth, awful fedoras, visible butt cracks, right? But if guys get together and talk about the 1998 home run chase, they're normal. And so I think it gives all the people that sort of fit more into society an avenue to like go on Baseball Reference and learn what wins above replacement is. Like,
yeah,
it provides them a room to be a spreadsheet guy. And I think this is something that is desperately needed in the modern world.
The first time I heard about what fantasy sports are,
yeah,
I was just like, nerds.
Yeah, it's an auto battler.
It is way nerdier than any of the shit that I do.
Absolutely.
It rules.
Yeah,
it rules. But then people are like, no, but it's sports though, and I'm like, yeah, all right, dude, sure.
It's the exact same thing. It's the exact
like,
same thing.
Can we just be honest about it? It's like, look, if you like fantasy sports, you might like a lot of the dumb stuff that I do too.
Mm-hmm. It's
maybe vice versa. I don't know. Maybe I'll like fantasy sports.
You would like fantasy sports.
If you did it with, I don't know, like, yeah, like
you would like
Magic players probably, or if there was like a Final Fantasy version or something, I'd be down.
Yeah, it just wait for Final Fantasy to do their auto battler and then the NFTs in it. The
yo mate.
They really love NFTs over at Square Enix. I'm not really sure what's up with that, but boy, they are.
I know.
They are.
Dude, I loved Ni no Kuni, which is like Studio Ghibli RPG, and then they were making an MMO, and I was like, I hate MMOs, but I'm gonna try it. And then they're like, we love NFTs. I'm like, never mind. I'm good.
We're making an MMO, and the M stands for market, and then so does the other M. we are. The O stands for rug pull, weirdly. Anyway, my Super Bowl pick is the Chiefs. They're like divinely ordained, or maybe not divinely ordained, but I hate them so much, and they're definitely going to win the Super Bowl. So
is that Travis Kelce?
That is. But that's not why I hate them. I actually find Taylor Swift relatable ever since they like Travis Kelce like dropped a pass or something, and or not Travis Kelce. It wasn't even Travis. That's the funny part about this. I think is like, I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was exactly. Someone dropped a pass. There's a lot of really shitty receivers on the Chiefs. It happens. And
see, that's relatable to me.
Yeah. It cut to Taylor Swift mouthing. Like she's in the box and she's yelling. We obviously can't hear it, but you can see from what she's saying is, I'm going to fucking kill myself. That is...
I was really wondering how you're going to tell a story where at the end of it, you're like, I found Taylor Swift relatable.
Incredibly, it is
Makes
it
sense.
is insanely relatable to watch one of your wide receivers drop a pass and be like, "Oh my god, take me out of this world." Like that is the single most relatable moment she has ever had, in my opinion. And I actually generally kind of like her music. That's like, I don't even have like the typical like, oh, I hate Taylor Swift thing going for me. Like, but once that happened, I was like, no, I'm actually fully in support of Travis and Taylor at this point. If she's into games enough to like care about the wide receiver 3 on the Chiefs and be like, this fucking guy and his stone hands are fucking my shit up right now, that's anyone who's played fantasy sports knows that feeling. That's the getting mana screwed of fantasy sports.
Oh no, it is. It's just like, well, it's because this guy just chose to chuck it this week.
Yes, it is exactly it. That's actually the one really bad thing about fantasy sports is the variance is all like real people. So you're just like, one of the things like with the expanded legality of fantasy sports and gambling, it's very fun when you keep it to yourself. It's like that is relatable, Taylor Swift. It's not fun when people get on Twitter and like, you sold my parlay, you piece of shit, Kevin Durant, right? Like that's
that's from behind a computer screen.
Yes.
Obviously, that's easy.
Yeah.
Some people next level that stuff in TCGs, and they do that to their opponent when like they got mana screwed and feel like your opponent played bad or they got lucky, like they top decked you or something.
MTGO
and it's like, they're a real human too, and you still go off on them like this. Like at some point, you will understand empathy, maybe, possibly. You will understand maybe that you are not the main character of the universe.
I am though.
Well, you are, right? But there can only be one,
right? They definitely aren't.
Yeah.
All right. So that's like a short way of saying we probably won't have many sports stories on this show unless I can convey them to Gerry in the context of card games, which I think I did a pretty good job of doing there, honestly.
Yeah, and so I mean, I have a good base to work with too, right? Mm-hmm. I know a lot of the old, like you're talking about the 91 home run race or whatever. It's
98,
like, oh, you said 98.
That's like the big one.
I heard, was that Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa?
No, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa was 98. Barry Bonds was 2001 when he broke the record that McGwire set in 98. But like 98 was when they were chasing Roger Maris's 61, which was Babe Ruth's 60.
Okay, so was that guy doping back then? I can't imagine.
Which guy? Roger Maris? No.
Yeah.
No, he was just on what every other baseball player of the time was, which is a bunch of amphetamines. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were on, I believe it was actually like legal at the time. Like they bought, like McGwire especially would buy his shit in just like a Walmart. But if you go back and like look at Mark McGwire,
that's incredible.
It is like, it was just like a thing like, you could get off the shelf. You would get androtestosterone off the shelf. You'd inject it into yourself and your forearms would become the size of tree trunks. That's what happened to Mark McGwire. I don't even know if it was injectable. He might've been taking pills, but Barry Bonds on the other hand had like a specialized lab.
Too rich.
Barry Bonds had like the designer drugs of 2003 of 2001.
Yeah.
I guess he probably started in like 99 or something. But like,
likely,
Barry Bonds is actually a very fun baseball player to consider conceptually. I think you might enjoy.
He was not bad, but he was not like home run record good.
No, he actually was. That's the thing. Like Barry Bonds was already arguably the best player in baseball. And then he also went and did the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z with a gorilla. Mm-hmm. And so then he was this guy who was the best player in baseball at a point in his career where you normally start going down as your athleticism declines. His athleticism spiked dramatically.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe he was just like getting old or something. I don't know.
It was a lot of stuff.
As this should illustrate, and actually like thinking about it, I don't think that I've ever like talked to anyone about sports, the stuff that I know and am aware of. It was just like things that I read, but it was very much like a solo endeavor.
Sure.
So anyway, you understand that I have a foundation for things. I may not know years or like all the people, but it's like I know a lot of the characters and you can fill in the blanks.
Sure.
And I don't know how sports work or whatever.
Yeah. I would be
But
like, there's a great video by John Boyce called Barry Bonds Without a Bat, which is 10 minutes and probably right up the alley of anyone listening to this, honestly. Highly recommend. Also not sponsored, would kill to be sponsored by John Boyce. Moving on down my list of questions. We have, do you guys think adding tribal tags would help make the game more interesting like they did with the X-Men event?
yes and no. The There are two big things to me. One is complexity. Like, how many cards are there in Marvel Snap, and do you need to memorize like the creature type for all of them? Like, how relevant is it going to be? And the other thing is there's confusion where it's like you look at a magic card and maybe you can tell it's like a human or a cat or something, but you don't know if they're counting Wolverine as being like on the X-Men or Avengers or whatever. And it's like, what era, what timeline are we
Yeah.
talking about? What if you literally have a variant where he's like wearing his Avengers costume or something, and you're like, ah, he's an X-Men though.
I really disliked the second event they did because of that, where it was just there was too much there. There were too many teams to keep track of. But I think like if you did like here's a card that gives the Fantastic Four like high evolutionary for the Fantastic Four or high evolutionary for the OG X-Men or any of that. I think that is what I would do as far as teams go, where it's like, here's high evolutionary for the Series 1 Avengers. High evolutionary for the MCU Avengers lets you like sort of upgrade these MCU Series 1 cards. Similar concept to actual high evolutionary, right? That's what I would want to do.
Yeah, MCU is kind of weird though, because obviously when you're talking about Avengers, like that's pretty specific, but like there are a lot of characters who show up in movies and it's like, oh, I didn't know it was this character
Oh
because they don't
god.
even necessarily like reference them by name. They're only in a couple scenes or whatever, right? Like that stuff is kind of weird. So if it was broader, like even outside of like X-Men, what if they just did like mutant?
That feels racist.
But do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but also like I would
Like if you know
explicitly not want to do that because of the connotations of the X-Men story.
yeah, uh, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's like they are very much like singled out, period, and they know that, you know?
Sure. But I think
Uh,
a game explicitly making it a different category of existence,
no,
I
no,
think
I'm not
that
saying mutant or other. I'm saying like mutant or like, people whose stories take place in Earth or in space rather, not on Earth. So like it's like you have a class of cards that is like, Thanos, Galactus, Nova, whatever,
so you got
right?
so to be clear, your two classes are mutants and aliens.
No, because there are still like superpower people on Earth that are not one of those two things.
Right. Right.
And there are like other dimensional beings, and like you could find ways to make the groups a little bit bigger and make it so you can't have the argument of like, oh, is this when they're on X-Men or X-Force?
So
Which team are they?
I realize that that solves some problems, but unfortunately, the timeline bullshit still comes up. For example, Miss Marvel was not originally a mutant. She is now, though. Like,
Yeah, it depends. Like obviously some things are retconned or whatever, but like if say in the comics someone has lost their powers, well, I think that's kind of BS if you're going to try and say that they're not a mutant in the card game where
sure.
they are expressing their powers or whatever.
Right.
It's like that to me makes sense where it's like, yeah, this is not the human version of this person. Like
Yeah.
this is not the dead version of Jean Grey that I just played or whatever. Like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whatever.
like you
It
could
doesn't
you
make
could
sense.
do you could do that. I just think if you were going to do that, you probably want the synergy. You'd still probably want to do X-Men and like Brotherhood. You'd want to split mutants into like multiple teams because there's like 500 of them.
There are a lot, and that is a problem. But even between those two, there's a lot of
There are
ambiguity,
a
right?
lot. Yeah. Like Magneto, for example. I mean, wherever he's at, who the hell knows? And like the most recent arc of the X-Men comics that I'm aware of, I mean, Krakoa just ended, but like there wasn't really the mutants and it wasn't really the X-Men and the Brotherhood. It was like all the mutants were kind of together. So you could justify it, I think, if Krakoa is still going on. You could do like a Krakoan tag, maybe.
Okay. That one is weird to me specifically because I'm not a current person. So
They
it's like I
made uh a mutant ethno state, but it's
no, no,
good.
I yeah, I know what Krakoa
Okay.
is. I know that there are like 5 people who combined with their powers can bring people back to life or whatever. I know some of that
Yeah,
stuff.
the primary being Hope Summers, yes.
Sure. But I would not be able to tell you necessarily who those people are, and I certainly cannot tell by looking.
I can
But
tell
like
you who one of those people is other than Hope Summers, and it's his name is Gold Balls, which they later renamed him to
no.
Egg, but his name was Gold Balls, a real Marvel character named Gold Balls.
How?
I don't know.
How did that happen?
Gold Balls, dude. That's my boy
This is
Gold
like
Balls.
this is like the OG era League of Legends people having to change their screen names because they went pro, and it's like, yeah, we can't be having that on our live stream.
What are you thinking of specifically? I'm trying to remember because I know that's real stuff, but I'm trying to remember like some specifics here.
I met this dude at a party once. It wasn't a party. It was just like at Kibler's house,
Sure.
and they're just like they introduced me to this dude. Like I walk in, they're like, "Oh, dude, this is Jerry. He plays Hearthstone. You can talk to him about Hearthstone because he had just like gotten into Hearthstone. Had so many questions. Talked to him for like 2 minutes. I'm like, this dude's annoying as hell. I got to get the hell out of here. And they're
Okay.
like, yeah, he's a pro League of Legends player. His name is Meteos.
Wait.
His screen name used to be Meaty Hose.
Oh, that rocks. Yeah, no, I remember Meteos. He's still around. Like he's a streamer now mostly, but like yeah, that's still a guy.
He was
You just
annoying.
you just trashed him on the podcast. It's crazy, man. Shout
Yeah,
out to Meteos. I never thought you were annoying. I also never met you.
you never had him like bugging you about Hearthstone for 2 minutes, just
It's like
talking
a
a mile
really
a
low
minute.
number, man.
my tolerance is not very high, especially when I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends, these people I like, and it's gonna be fun. And then I just immediately I'm on babysitting duty.
Oh man.
Like,
That's
yeah, this guy is way richer, way cooler. I don't remember what he looks like, but I would assume better looking. Like, he's better than me. Whatever. I thought he was annoying. I didn't want to be around him. The end.
that's our bombshell ending for the episode. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. I will get names next time. I kind of want to make this a regular thing, but we probably can't go 50 minutes on all of them. But I do think that, I think we're going to try to make it a regular thing. If you have questions, put them in the comments. We will get to them in the Snapback. That's what we're calling this. What was the abbreviation I had? I swore it was going to be good. Your hand is up. No one,
It's
no
something
one.
about MMOs and rug pulls. I don't remember.
The rug pull.
I have a suggestion.
You have a question?
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
We used to have folks submit questions a day or two in advance and then pick our favorite, and then we answer that at the end of our podcast.
I did do that. These were my favorites.
No, one. You pick
Oh,
one. Every week.
one. No, we're not going to cut it down to one. That's
Maybe
cruel.
make it two.
It's going to be some number, but it's not going to be like a defined number. It's going to be
Three.
a vibes
Three is a
number.
good solid odd number.
Sure. All right. And with all of that said, I just remembered another League of Legends pro who had to change his name. His name was Big Fat Gigi, which is like slang in I forget which Asian country for a penis, right? And so he changed it to Big Fat LP, also slang for a penis, but slightly sneakier.
Well, I think Sneaky was one of those people too, right? That had changed the name.
Oh God, you're right. That's a really good point. Yeah. Wait, no, it wasn't that bad. I think. I don't remember, and I don't want to remember. I don't.
Look it up.
Okay. All right. With all of that said, thank you so much for everyone who has stuck around to the end of this episode. I have been KMBest. He's been Gerry Thompson. We will see you in the next one. Please remember, like and subscribe. Make sure you check us out, Spotify. I will see you next time.